Thank you all so much for joining in to today's episode of Empowered in Health. I am so excited to have Shannon Acheson here. She is an incredible organizational guru, and I am so excited for you to hear more of her story, more of her heart, and hear her talk a little bit about how nurturing our homes, being grateful for our homes, organizing our homes, decluttering, all of those things really play a massive role in how we feel as women, how we feel from the inside out. And I'm really excited for her to just share her expertise. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Erin. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, of course. I would love for you to start with just kind of sharing your personal story, like talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you kind of got started in the organizational space.
I have always sort of loved neat and tidy, pretty spaces, even when I was younger. That doesn't mean I knew how to put them together well, right? That takes a bit of practice. And I've been married for 28 years. I have 3 kids who are now like 20. One turns 22 today and then 24. And so, a lot of homes over the years, my husband and I moved a lot. So I've had a lot of experience, organizing and decorating many, many different sort of apartments and townhouses and houses and things like that. And so, over time, I sort of knew that helped me feel better myself living in an organized, sort of tidy, clutter-free space. And it was sort of just took a little bit of time to put together, oh, wait, that's, that there's psychological reasons for that. Like everybody is sort of, that's good for everybody. And then I started my website, under a different name back then, but 14 years ago. And we were renovating a tiny little bungalow that we had bought. And I thought, well, other people are sharing DIYs and things like that. And so that's how we started out. We started out sharing DIYs. I'd done lots of things before that, completely unrelated to this. And then it sort of over time, it morphed into, okay, well, I'm going to share decorating and I'm going to share organizing and decluttering too, just because it's sort of all encompassing. It's all part of the house thing, right? And as women, we're really in tune to our homes and the space around us, whether we want to be or not. That's just seems to be how it works. So I've been doing this for a while and just really honing in on how to help better. And my brain works very step by step when I'm teaching. So how to teach women how to do that step by step and then encourage them and empower them to do it. Right. So that's sort of the gist.
Love that you think in a step-by-step way because I know for me, and I know for many women, a lot of the clients I work with and a lot of the women I talk to, having that step-by-step plan or having somebody that encourages you through, this is how you can do it and this is how you can execute makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I love that that's how your brain works and that's really what you're passionate about in the work you do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start by talking a little bit about if you were going to speak to someone like me or speak to a woman about their home, what would maybe be the starting point you would help them think about when they want to maybe organize a space or declutter in some way or get to this place where they're not quite so overwhelmed maybe by their home?
Okay, the very, very first thing that I start with is gratitude. And some of us live in, our dream home, or some of us live in a great home, but honestly, not everybody lives in a home that whatever is termed your forever home or whatever it is, your dream home. And so the place to really start, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed by your home, is to start with gratitude. And look for things that you can be grateful for about your home, no matter how small. I mentioned really briefly the house that we were renovating, that was a tiny little rundown house. We moved there just to be closer to my husband's work. He'd been commuting for a while. And so we very nearly went bankrupt, but it was this tiny little rundown house. And we didn't have a lot of experience doing projects and doing things back then. And back then, 15 years ago. Anyway, that's a long time. Anyway, so I could have really disliked that house because after we moved in, we found out that the floors were rotted too, that the house inspector didn't catch and all this stuff. And I could have very easily hated that house, but I was stuck there. And so I could either choose to be totally miserable or look for things to be grateful for. And initially we were literally closer to my husband's work. We literally had a roof over our heads, the smallest things. And that made a huge, huge difference in my mindset and my attitude towards the house as we sort of fixed it up over time too. But so gratitude is always the place that I start, because whatever you think about all the time, there's that quote, whatever you focus on grows, right? It doesn't actually grow and get worse, but in your head, it sure does. And so gratitude is always, always where I start before anything actually physically gets done with a space.
I love that. And is there a practice that you go through with your clients or with the people that you work with, or how do you actually help them hone in on this concept of gratitude and just really being grateful for where you are?
Yeah, in my course, I have a course called More Style, Less Mess, and a free class that goes before that. But I teach two things. One is a gratitude walk. So, people do it as a practice outside or whatever, just in general for their life kind of gratitude. In this case, it's a gratitude walk through your house. It's going through each room and, either just saying out loud the things you're thankful for in that room, or actually writing them down to go back to later should you need to. And you walk into a room, start upstairs or downstairs, doesn't matter. Walk into a room and pick at least one thing you're grateful for in that room. Three things are even better. But if you can only get to one, that's okay too, because that's a huge start. And then move on to the next room. The second way is a gratitude journal. So it's kind of really similar. You just don't actually do the physical walking part, and you definitely write it down. You write down three things that you're grateful for about your house every day for a period of time. I tend to recommend at minimum a week, just to sort of get used to it. And then beyond that, to keep doing it just so that it's front of mind to be thankful and grateful for your house.
I've never heard of that concept of kind of going
Okay.
room to room. That's so cool. And something I honestly wish I would have had a little more perspective on inside our last house.
Mm,
So we bought a house that was 130 years old outside Chicago, and it
okay.
needed a lot of work. It was a beautiful old home, but it
Hmm.
just had uneven floors. We had mice in the basement. We had a lot happening there.
Yeah.
Took me some time to really warm up to this place that we were staying in and
Yeah.
really getting to this headspace of making it our own. And so I would have loved that concept of figuring out, what do I love in each of these spaces and how can I
Yeah.
be grateful for where I am right now? And I think
Yeah.
that's such a cool practice. I love that. That's so cool.
It can
I
be the smallest thing too, right? It's just, yeah, so
Yeah,
good.
that's so powerful, Shannon. I love that. I would love to kind of switch gears because we've talked a
Hmm.
little about gratitude, being grateful
Yeah.
for your space. And I know one of the things that you also talk about and teach is your decluttering process. And so I know for me, as a mom of four, I struggle with clutter, right? And I'm really actually a pretty organized person. And I do also really feel inside my body and my brain what happens when we have a lot of stuff going on and we have a lot of things all over the place. It really starts to mess with my mindset and my mental health, and just this feeling of overwhelm and anxiety, and I don't know where to start. Like, it just feels very cluttered even in my mind. And so I'd
Yeah.
love for you to talk a little bit about your decluttering success strategy, what that
Yeah.
is. And I'd love for you to speak kind of to the mom who has maybe a lot of clutter in her house, but also is trying to manage this concept of, these things are sentimental, or these are like the art projects from kindergarten
Right.
I don't want to get rid of, or those kinds of concepts. I know for moms and for me can be tricky, but I also know, like, it's really overwhelming to try
Yeah.
to figure out how to keep all the things or also organize all the things. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about decluttering, that process, and how you would help someone like me and just other moms that are listening.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack because that's a lot of separate things, but that contributes totally to the overwhelm, right? Because in our brain, it gets all jumbled up and tied together, and it's a bit like spaghetti, and it's messy up there. So really, what I would say first of all about the art and sentimental things, put that to the side for now, and don't tackle those things first. Put them out of the way. Deal with that after you've had some, what I like to call small wins, sort of that give you some confidence in your ability to do this, to get things decluttered, to get things more organized. Decluttering and organizing also tend to go together, but they're also very separate things, if that makes sense. Decluttering is the clearing out and freeing up space in your home so you can sort of breathe, right? Organizing is then finding places for things and returning them to those places sort of as time goes on. So they can be done together, but they can also be done totally separate. And so the decluttering success strategy sort of, it's an acronym. Success is an acronym. So the first S is for start smart. So you start in a place that will give you that quick win. One of the easiest places to start, actually, believe it or not, is a bathroom, because
Yeah.
there's very rarely anything sentimental in there. It's pretty easy. The next thing is sort of maybe a coat closet by the front door. It depends on the age and stage of your kids, of course. If they're blowing through clothes and, they won't be that size again, that's a different story. But a bathroom's super easy place to start. So start somewhere in your house that will give you a quick win. The U in success strategy is unload your space. So you sort of, once you choose a place to start, you unload that space. Now, that means to empty it out, like clear it out so that you can see the space, you can breathe it. So, if you're decluttering a bathroom, you take stuff out and like pile it on the counter for now, or put it in another room temporarily while you sort through it. If you're someone who is one, going to get extra overwhelmed by that extra mess, or two, you potentially could get called away or distracted by doing a whole room at once. Start with something smaller, do a drawer at a time kind of thing. The process is still the same. You choose something, then you clear it out. So let's say we're starting the bathroom and we're going to start with a drawer, empty out the drawer. And then the first C in success strategy is to categorize those things. So if it's a bathroom drawer, that's hair ties, foundation, toothpaste, toothbrushes, that sort of thing. You categorize them and you put them in piles. You can also say, sort of gather like with like, so you can see exactly what you have. The next C in success strategy is to choose what to keep. This isn't about scarcity. This is about making space and freeing up space. It's not about, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of all the things I love. That is not it at all. So choose what you're going to keep. Then comes the E, which is eliminate what you don't need. If you've got 5 toothbrushes for just you, that, they're not in packages and they're not brand new for later. They're 5 open toothbrushes. Or when I talk about a kitchen, how many can openers do you really need? How many apple peelers do you really need? Get rid of stuff that's excess, right? That you just don't need. When was the last time you used it? Is there something else that would do the job that would take up less space? I mean, something I use as an example there, you don't need a melon baller unless you eat a lot of melons and you like those little balls. The rest of us, it's the same thing. Again, in the kitchen, those deviled egg slicers, you have a knife. Unless you use a lot of deviled egg slices, you probably don't need that. I'm not telling you what you need or don't. I'm just saying examples. The next S, so second to last, is to sell, donate, or trash things. So that is where you actually get them out of your house. So you've sort of decided what you want to get rid of, but a lot of times we have this thing where we pack it up and it sits in our front entryway or it sits in our trunk before we actually get rid of it. So sell, donate, or trash those things to get them out so it's actually cleared. And then the last S in the success strategy is to savor the piece. Even if it's just a drawer you cleaned out, oh my gosh, enjoy that drawer, celebrate that drawer. We need to celebrate those things. And so it's an acronym that just helps go through the process. And no matter what space you're decluttering, the process is exactly the same.
So good. And you're right, savoring the celebration of it.
Yeah.
Because it really does feel like this release. Look what I accomplished. Look how much more organized this feels and clear this feels. I love that. That's so powerful. What a cool acronym. And I know that you are so gifted at the work you do, and it's very clear how passionate you are. That's so, so awesome.
Oh yeah, that's totally my heart.
I love it. And I can't thank you enough for just sharing some tangible ways for people like me, women, moms, whoever, to just really think about how can I start to slowly clear out spaces in my home so it feels a little bit less chaotic. So going back really quickly to the sentimental part, if you were going to talk a little bit more about that, how do you decipher through that? Do you use the same strategy? Is it technically a decluttering strategy? Is it a little bit different? I know sentimental things can be really tricky. And I know they are for me. I come from a home where my parents saved everything, everything. And I've learned that over time, it just becomes too much. And I would love to have a tangible way to think about what do I really want to keep, and would love to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, so that can be sentimental stuff can be so tricky because we just have these psychological attachments to them. We think of the person who gave them to us or the person who it belonged to in the past. And so you need to tackle that when you're not in a terrible state of mind. If you are frazzled and life is crazy, don't tackle those things then. Keep them put aside. Give yourself grace with that. And then look at it in terms of, I'm not saying that you have to get rid of everything, and I'm not saying that you should keep everything either. So it's sort of this thing of, okay, what do you have space for genuinely, and go from there. And the wonderful thing, let's go, for example, I was given my grandmother's extensive set of gold rimmed china. Now, I am not a fancy person. I love pretty things, but that freaking dishware can't be put in the dishwasher. It is hand washed and super breakable. It's beautiful and classic and amazing. But I was given this full set. And this is after I knew it was mine, but it sat in my mom's basement for a long time. And then it sat in my sister's basement in a tote for a long time. And finally, my sister's like, man, you got to get this out of my house. I'm like, okay, fine. And so I went through it. And what I did in this case is I looked at how much space I had. I do still have a china cabinet. It holds all kinds of other things, serveware and stuff like that, and just stuff. But it's styled, so it's not like stuffed stuff. And I looked at the space that I genuinely had. I looked at how many people we usually have here or have over for holidays. And I looked at how we served things. Do I need 50,000 teacups? Right. No, I do not. But my daughter and my sister love to drink from a real china teacup. So I kept enough so that if we actually sat down, we could have dinner plate, a salad plate, teacup and saucer, and then I think a platter and a sugar and creamer or something. Like I kept what I would actually use. So it's still my grandmother's china set. It still was given to me. It's still a sentimental thing, but less is not none. I didn't get rid of all of it. I kept what we would use. And so that makes sense for china. It doesn't make sense for things that aren't useful. Let's take the photographs, for example. You can't necessarily hang them all on the wall. And here's the thing. Keep what is useful, keep what you have space for, keep what you are super attached to. I also have my other grandmother's engagement ring and another ring that she had. Do I wear them very often? No. But do they take up very much space either? No. So the other thing is we have these amazing things now that you can take so many pictures of with and look at it anytime you want. So just because you don't have the physical item in your house anymore doesn't mean that it's gone.
Right.
And then the other thing is if you're holding on to it because of some perceived financial value, even though it's a sentimental thing, that's a choice you have to go, well, am I actually going to sell it? Do I like, why am I holding on to it? So a lot of it is, it's the same process. You need to pull it all out. You need to choose what you're going to keep and cherish that you have room for. And then, some stuff sometimes has to go. Like you don't need to keep every single piece of your kids' artwork. And there are amazing, like companies now where you can take a picture, upload it, and you can put a book together of your kids' stuff and have it printed, like to keep the original thing. You could create a digital gallery. There are so many options now. We live in the best time for that, of not having to hold on to it all, really.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder. And I've loved those apps where you can actually take pictures, create books, or you can do that with your social feeds. Like you said, artwork, family pictures, all the things. And that's such a powerful reminder of you don't necessarily have to have the tangible thing. You can create a lot of cool digital offerings just to remember the things and have the memories. And at the end of the day, that's what matters most, right?
It is. Yeah, for sure. The memories don't go away when you get rid of the thing, especially if you keep a picture of some sort.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Shannon, I'd love to move a little bit into functionality, because that's something that I actually struggle with as a mom. My house is crazy, loud, stuff everywhere. There's just a lot happening with 4 kids, and there's a lot of things that come with 4 kids. And sometimes I know both my husband and I struggle with this concept of how do we really focus on purchases that look really nice, that are appealing to what our style is, but also have some level of function for the season of life we're in, and for the fact that we have a lot of kids that out of our house all the time. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about style, function. How do you really figure out evaluating that in your space? And do you have any tips related to that when you're kind of, working on your home?
Yeah. So it's funny you say you have 4 kids. I have 3 kids. They are, like I said, they're like 20, 22, and 24. They all still live here. They're either in school or sort of just launching or whatever. And then we actually have a bonus kid right now. One of our kids' friends moved in for the college school year.
Okay.
So we have 6 fully grown adults living here right now. So it's the groceries, I have to say. Anyway. The style and function thing together is there's a couple of things. One is don't buy anything that's too precious, because it will just stress you right out trying to keep that thing precious. Right? One of the things when we needed a new couch a few years ago, I really loved the Pottery Barn sort of roll arm sofa kind of thing. It's the one with round arms. It's beautiful. It's also really expensive. We looked everywhere for a sofa, and all the ones that my husband and I liked, I'm like, if I spend that much money, even not Pottery Barn, just if I spend that much money, I'm not going to want anybody to do anything on it. Like, no. And so in the end, we chose an IKEA slip covered couch. And that thing, we have had that thing for 8 years, and it has been amazing. And it's budget friendly. It's pretty, in my opinion. I like it. It goes with our style, but I can take those slip covers off and wash them. And worst case, I can replace the slip covers for way less than the cost of the couch, right? Yeah. And so I think there's sort of a balance in finding things. I love IKEA for a lot of those kind of things. We also tend to like, this is easy for us because we like sort of a more rustic sort of look. And so when wood gets dinged up, it's not a big deal. It's not like, when my mom or my grandma had like that teak table that was all polished with pledge and whatever. So look for things that are sort of durable, that suit your style, but like shop secondhand. Facebook Marketplace, I don't know about where you are. So Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, like all those things, because then it's not too precious and it can still suit your style, but you're not going to freak out if someone spills grape juice on it or something. Right? As far as function goes, double duty pieces are amazing. So like storage ottomans and things like that, amazing. We used an actual dining room hutch. I homeschooled my kids all the way through. And so we actually had our dining room hutch. All the bottom drawers back then was homeschool stuff. So it fit in with our style, but it was purposeful and functional. Those sort of things. Yeah, it's you just have to think a little bit outside the box, right? It doesn't have to be a toy box. You can put it in something else.
Right. Right.
Right.
And I love your reminder on things like Facebook Marketplace, et cetera. I mean, we found an amazing bunk bed for our little kids
Yeah.
that was barely used,
Yeah.
that was significantly discounted and very
Right.
similar to a very specific kind of look or a specific kind of product from certain companies. It was amazing. And I
Yeah.
love that reminder of you don't have to go out and do the things with spending all the money on a specific kind of brand, et cetera, that there's a lot of great secondhand
Yeah.
options and so many different things online that you can kind of shop around and look at. So I love that
Yeah.
as a reminder because it's
Yeah.
it's so good to know that there's options like that out there, and it can really make a difference in what you're doing in your home or what you have in your home and just the
Right.
overall looks. Shannon, I'd love to talk a little bit about just this concept of doing it all as women. And
Mm.
I think when I think about homes and managing your home, decluttering your home, organizing your home, understanding how your home may make you feel from the inside out from a health and wellness standpoint. I know women often struggle with this concept of I have to do it all, or I have to be the one that's really managing all these different pieces to my life. And with the clients that I work with all of the time, one of the things I hear the most is I have no time, or
Mm.
I'm so overwhelmed by all of the like typical day-to-day things. How do I get myself to this headspace of even switching gears and decluttering or organizing
Right.
or managing my space? So I'd love for you to maybe speak about some of that mental and emotional weight that women carry of this concept of, well, I have to do it all and I'm the one that's managing the things. And what would you say to that person? Would it be about delegating? Would it be about communicating your needs in some way? Would it be about, hiring some level of help? I'd love to hear just for that woman that has that headspace, what
Yeah.
would you say, or how would you kind of coach her through that?
No, I think to some extent we're sort of aware of all the things. I think more than, than our husbands are, than guys are, than whatever. I think we're just more aware of it. And
Yeah.
so that means then by default, a lot of times we take on the managing of it all. The other thing is that everybody who lives in your house should have jobs and chores to do, whether you're the one who assigns that or whether you teach them. Like I said, we homeschooled our kids. And so I have not had to clean, well, up until recently, I have not had to clean the whole house. They're grown-ups, but they're all out of the house a lot. So I'm doing more cleaning than I used to. But
Yeah.
when they were younger, we had routines and schedules that I wasn't the only one who was cleaning everything. I was not the one who was tidying everything. Everybody had jobs and chores and we had assigned days to do it. And the only reason it's kind of a little bit wacky now is because some of them work nights, some of them start really early in the morning. It's a little bit crazier. They're all still responsible for their own spaces. The girls look after their own bathroom because I'm not going in there. There are other people who live in your house with you. They should all have jobs and chores too. The only exception, obviously, is when they're babies and they can't help you. But as
Right.
soon as they can toddle around, I mean, I would have our kids help with putting their toys away. And because they couldn't read labels on things, I would take pictures of the toys and stick it to the side of the bin so that they knew where things went. Right? Like the only thing I think I would have done differently rather than that is I would have still given them chores, but I also would have taught them a little better to look around and notice what needed being done because it was always me. And now I'm realizing, shoot, maybe I shouldn't have done it that way. Because now that they're big, I'm the only one who's noticing it. If you're married, or whatever, your husband should darn well be doing a bunch of the stuff too, regardless of who looks after what. Like that's for you to figure out in your house. I just, took me a long time to, growing up in a traditional house. Mom stayed home for a long time, didn't go back to work till I was a teenager. In my house, it was dad didn't do any of the house stuff. And so when I got married and sorting that out with my husband, that was a little tricky. And it took a while for both of us to sort of get our footing there. But the fact of the matter is he's a grown up and he lives there too. And, the kids are capable, if they're not babies or tiny toddlers, they're capable of helping to their age, like their age and stage. And so you shouldn't have to do all of it by yourself. If you have the money to hire some things, by all means do that. Yeah, like hire help, hire cleaning help, hire whatever, meal service, whatever works to help take some of that load off of you.
Yeah.
There will be seasons where maybe you'll have to do it for a little bit by yourself. But then as soon as it's okay to get away from, like, get out of that, it shouldn't just be you doing all the things.
Doing all the
You'll
things.
probably be more aware of it still than everybody else.
Yeah.
I think that's just our nature. People don't notice the crumbs on the counter. It drives me bonkers, but nobody else notices. Like,
Yeah.
seriously.
It's the
So
noticing. That is,
it is. It
you're
is. And I
hitting
think that's just our nature. And I don't think delegating gets rid of that, but it does take the pressure off of actually having to do it
yeah.
all.
That
Yeah.
you're like, you're really truly are hitting the nail on the head. Totally the noticing. And I know that I have noticed that in myself. I'll walk down the hallway and there'll be these little piles of things. And in my head, I'm saying to myself, did nobody else saw
Y'all
these
walk
things?
past it.
No one else saw like that
Yeah.
this could maybe go here, or this could be put away, this could go in the laundry, this could be
Yeah.
folded up. I love that you're speaking about the noticing, because that really truly is one of the feelings that we all experience, most
Yeah.
likely in some way. And because of that, it feels like we're supposed to do it all.
Right.
And
You
I
can
love,
ask them to come back and pick up the stuff in the hallway.
yeah,
Does it take longer than doing it yourself? Yup.
yeah,
However,
that
yeah.
mindful practice
Yeah.
is so good. Like, such a
Yeah.
great reminder for all of us to say that we can step out and say, you know what, we need to work together to do this, or we need to have maybe
Mhm.
people have different jobs in the house, or how do we make sure that we're really working on this whole idea of organizing and decluttering together, because
Right.
it's not okay or not fair for it to land in one place, right?
It's true. Yeah.
I love that, Shannon. So good. Really quickly, before we kind of
Mhm.
move into starting to wrap up, I know
Yeah.
that one of the things you teach and talk about is this concept of creating a small, pretty corner in your
Mm.
house, and why that can be powerful for your mindset, why that can be powerful for your mood, why that can be powerful for your gratitude. I'd love for you to speak a little bit about you teaching that and what that looks like, what that means.
So I think that comes a little bit to, we notice all the things. And so we also notice beauty, and we also notice coziness. Right? And if your house is sort of chaotic and busy, this is something that we did because we were renovating so much. We renovated, the last few houses we lived in. And, you mentioned you lived in an older house that needed stuff. And so there was always mess. There was always sawdust. There was always kids' toys. There was always papers. And so having that space, no matter, if it's a chair in a corner with a pretty pillow and a blanket, like, having that space to sort of retreat to, even for a few minutes, just to sort of clear your mind, is so important, because I think we notice all the things and we feel the weight of all the things just inherently. And so creating that cozy space, even in a small house, I mean, that tiny little house, once we had finished our bedroom space, there was a little chair there, and so, a pretty picture and whatever. And so even if your house is small, you should be able to create out some tiny little corner, cozy corner somewhere. If you've got more room and, you can create a whole room, awesome, great. Part of that for us was, once the kids got big enough to not play in the living room, I guess, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
when they're toddlers, they have to be with you where you can see them all the time. As
right.
soon as they got just past that, we moved the toys, aside from like some hidden in baskets and stuff, out of there. And then as the kids got older, it was, okay, so on the main floor, you can't leave your stuff lying around. You take it up to your room, or you take it to the family room, or it doesn't stay in the main living area, just
Right.
for sanity's sake, to have a space that is somewhat calm and peaceful. So it depends on your age and stage a little bit, but it is super important for your mindset to have some sort of space that's not piled with all the things, and maybe even pretty.
And pretty. I know
Yeah.
that makes a big difference for me. Just
Yeah.
knowing that I have like this one little space in the house where my things are organized,
Yeah.
and I can sit down and kind of have a clear mind and just feel like I have one thing that is mine to own. That
Yeah.
feels really empowering in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And it gives a
Yeah.
lot of clarity. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shannon,
Yeah.
because it's such a good little tip. I love how you are talking about these simple things that don't need to be this huge,
Yeah.
overwhelming process. It can be very, very simple, very strategic steps, and how small changes can make a big difference. And that's really
Definitely.
that's what I keep hearing from you. And I love that, because it's such
Definitely.
a good reminder for overwhelmed women who have a lot going
Yes.
on, right?
Well, that's it. They need we need small things
Yeah.
that can be small changes implemented, right? Because so much is going on.
So much is going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
we close, there are two specific questions that I love to
Okay.
ask everyone that comes on the podcast. And one of the things that I am really passionate about is talking about our inside out wellness, taking care of ourselves as women, and really this concept of mental health, and making sure that we're paying attention to, the soundtracks in our heads, what we're telling ourselves, and just things that make us feel a certain way that we have to continue to be mindful of. And so one of the things I ask everyone that comes on the podcast is this concept of why you may think sharing our stories or being vulnerable about what works for us in our work or in our day to day or in our, whatever that it is that we're doing is really important for other women, for other people in the motherhood community to hear. Because I know for me, I've really been encouraged by people sharing their thoughts and sharing what's working for them. So tell me why you feel like that might be important to you, or why you think that's important.
I think we get stuck in this place of thinking that we're the only ones going through something and feeling sort of lost and alone and sort of an island. And I think that by sharing our stories and sharing even just little snippets and bits and pieces, sort of like, this is a podcast episode. We can't possibly know everything about each other, but even just sharing those things, it's like, wait a second, I'm not by myself. I'm not the only one who, in this case, feels alone or overwhelmed by my house, or feels like I'm the only one who does all the things. There's other moms who feel, and women who feel the same thing. And I think that's why it's important to share, so that we can sort of make the small changes, because we realized we're not the only ones that are feeling those things.
Yeah, we're not the only ones. And the success strategy, I'm taking that. You've already taught me so much. I love that when people come on and talk about their stories, and you've come on today and shared your passion in your heart, you've taught me so much. And I know everyone that will listen to this is going to learn so much too, which is so powerful. So I love that reminder on we're not alone, and
Yeah.
sharing can be so powerful to remind us that there's other people that may be experiencing what we've experienced. And this is how we learn and grow, by continuing
Yeah.
to share our stories. So
Yeah.
last question, Shannon, in closing, one of the things I love to ask is about favorite quotes, a mindset mantra, or something that reminds you of the importance of taking care of yourself, organizing your home, having a pretty corner, whatever it is. What's something you can lean on to remind you to do that for yourself?
This is a new thing for me, but I can choose. I can choose in my head how I react to something. Those crumbs on the counter, I just about lost it the other day. And then I'm like, wait a second. I don't have to be mad about this. Like, they didn't see it. So I can choose what my reaction is going to be. And I can choose, emotions are emotions, feelings are feelings, but I can choose how I act and react with them. And so that's kind of a new thing for me. I'm a very emotional, empathetic kind of person. And so I kind of often let my feelings and emotions run wild. So that is kind of new. And that's from a book that I was just reading this week by, I think it's Jenny Allen. So yeah.
So good. That's great. And a great one for me. I'm also very much an empath. Very animated, very emotional.
Yeah.
And I love the focus of reminding ourselves that we really can choose. We can choose how we show up. We can choose how we react. We can choose how we spend time and energy. That's so, so good. Shannon, thank you so much for sharing that. Before we finish, will you just quickly share how people can find you, any information about how they can potentially work with you if that's something they're interested in, or just share a little bit about how they can connect with you?
Yeah, the best place to go is homemadelovely.com. And the best thing there is there's a bunch of freebies, but there is a free class called Embrace Your Space, and it's how to create a home you love to live in. It's like an hour-long workshop, but it's free. And so, yeah, if you go to homemadelovely.com and then just click the button for Embrace Your Space, that is a great way to connect. All my socials are on there and stuff too. But thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. Your expertise is awesome. And I just cannot wait for women to get connected to this podcast and hear more of your perspective, and just really simple things that they can start to implement into their homes in order to feel grateful, and in order to get more of that clarity and just really feel really good about the space that they're in. For all of you that are interested in connecting with Shannon, all of the information about her website and details will be in the show notes of this podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks.